What's up, guys? Yoshi the Oreo here. So, I decided to do another quick video. That last video I did, that was more of a test. Well, that was more of my real feelings, but that was more of a test. I wanted to see how YouTube and people would actually handle, the cursing and me being actually real with my feelings, and apparently YouTube doesn't like that. Well, when in terms of like getting anybody to watch it, they really didn't like watching it. They watched it up to like, excuse me. I watched it up to like, I think when I looked at the analytics, up to like 6 minutes of it, and after that they kind of like tempered out. But yeah. But that was more of an insight of what I should really be doing with the video that I'm currently working on. So I'm gonna have to heavily censor that one. YouTube loves censorship, so fortunately I'm gonna have to play ball with them. So instead, I guess I'll do more of a centralized video on, my version of walking away as opposed to like it being scattered throughout my live stream and other videos. So yeah, here we go. And the reason why I decided to do this is because, well, my niece she recently turned 18, so she's about to become a member of society. Joy. So I guess in a way, I want to give her a real introductory to life, especially in terms of politics. Not to tell you, so this is my advice to my nieces and nephew when you guys turn 18 and become adults. So first of all, congratulations. Welcome to the real world. You're going to find out there's a lot of adults that are still children, unfortunately. But that's not entirely bad because everyone has the little inner child in them. Until they get into government power, then that's something to actually be really concerned about. Or they have massive influence and reach amongst the young generation. That's also another thing to be concerned about. But I guess the best place for me to start is with me. Okay? So let me give you my 411 on my politics. First off, let me start off when I was 18. Okay? When I was 18, I did not care about politics. I was completely out of it. This was like around 2007 when I went to college. Elena, this is when you were born. You were born. You was born on the 9th. I went to college on the 7th of the on January. And this was around the time where Obama was going against Mitt Romney, I believe, of that election. And a lot of people was really hyped that, oh, we're finally gonna get a black president. We're finally gonna break the racial string of white people running the country and finally get someone dark. And me, in my personal opinion, you guys never grew up with a lot of fabled stories or read a lot of stories back when you was younger. Like the Pied Piper, Red Riding Hood, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. You guys never really grew up with those kind of stories. I grew up with a lot of those stories. And a lot of those stories hold a lot of truth pertaining to how human behavior is often manipulated. Except for me. I wasn't a Republican, nor was I a Democrat, because I would say at that time, I didn't like subscribing to anything that I didn't necessarily understand, especially if someone was like feeding it to me. That kind of like ticked me off. I didn't like, subscribing to crap like that. If I'm going to subscribe to something, it's going to be based on what I read and what I understand, not what someone fed me. But for context, I did grow up in a Democrat family. Like my mom was a Democrat, my dad was a Democrat, my sister, who's your mother, is a Democrat, my grandma, Democrat. Everybody that was in that immediate family was a Democrat. And if you branch out and just, ask a bunch of other black people, right, especially around your age demographic, you'll find out that a lot of these people are also born into families of Democrats. So you're gonna automatically think, well, if the family's doing it, why should I? Or why shouldn't I? And the question you should always ask yourself is, why is it like that? And the follow up question you need to ask yourself is, why should it be like that? Now, continuing as I was 18 in college, I went to Ostapi State University. And, everybody was on campus, was happy. Like, oh, we're finally getting a black president, yada, yada, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, okay, I can understand why a lot of people are happy. I was like, let me ask why a lot of these people are voting for him. Because, he's got to be bringing something to the table that, people are like looking forward to. Other than, voting in a Oreo to break the chain of crackers that have been elected as president. And I'm not saying that in terms of racial, connotation. I'm saying that in terms of like a meme that was actually promoted back then on Facebook. That was like back then, like a lot of people was on. And that was like one of the memes that were posting that I think even today they would probably look at that and say that that's racist, despite the fact that the left was the one promoting it at that time. So, I'm going around asking the students. I'm even asking the teachers too. And I'm like, so what's your reasons for voting for Obama? What policies is he implementing that you're actually looking forward to? And I was incredibly disappointed to get the same copy paste. It was kind of weird. It's almost like these people like communicated with one another. And they were just all the same. It was just, oh, we're voting for him because he's black. Okay, what policy is he passing that that you're looking forward to? Policies that's going to have black people. Okay, what are those policies? He's going to lower taxes. And I'm like, okay, in my mind, I'm like, I know for a fact that this man's actually increasing taxes. So what the hell are you talking about? But, whatever. I was like, all right, what else? What else do you have? Oh, he's going to do this and he's going to do that. And he's going to change how black people are living in this country. And black people and white people are going to answer to him if they do anything wrong to us. And it's like, that's... He never said anything like that. I don't know where you're getting this from, but it's not on his brochure. It's not on his website. I don't know where you're getting this from. So where are you getting this from, laddie? I don't understand. And I found it very strange that a lot of black people, hell, even the white people, like, don't get me wrong, we're all just saying the same thing. Just, oh, he's black. So that's the only reason I'm voting for him. I'm like, no economical policies, no infrastructure plans, nothing. Okay. I guess I'm not voting for him because I don't know what it is. So that year I didn't vote, and, surprise, surprise, despite the fact of me not voting, Obama still won. And everyone was happy, and, somehow everyone's lives got better simply because they put a black dude in a presidential seat. And it didn't get better. No, it did not. Now, I can sit here and tell you my reasons as to why I do not like President Obama, but I think it's best for you to actually come to your own conclusions as opposed to me just, spoon feeding you my opinions and, you basing your opinions based off what I said. You definitely don't want to do that. You definitely don't want to base your, entire opinion based on what your mom says, your dad says, anybody. Base it on what you know and base it on what you know only. Because at the end of the day, we're human, we're going to be biased depending on certain circumstances, certain situations that we're going through, what party we're actually voting for or not voting for, what we ultimately believe, etc., so on and so forth. Humans are biased by nature. Don't let no one else tell you otherwise. Okay, fast forward from 2007 all the way down to 2020. This is where I'm actually being introduced to politics. And let's just say your uncle wasn't necessarily prepared for that kind of thing. Again, never really dabbled in politics, never really cared. But what happened around this time is what kind of really forced me into politics. It kind of forced a lot of people into politics, with the whole COVID thing. This is like when you guys were out of school for like a long time. So you guys remember like COVID and everything. Unfortunately, with the way government works, it kind of messed with your education a lot. A lot of people blame the Democrats for, their strong lockdowns and mandates and vaccines and masks. A lot of people blame Republicans for their, trying to open the economy, telling people to like just continue doing what you're doing. Don't worry about it. It ain't that big of a deal. Except for the old people and those who are with comorbidities, we need to be more concerned about them. But like those who are young, healthy, don't worry. You may get it, but you'll definitely fight it out of your system. And considering I'm diabetic, which means I don't have a lot of immunities, and my immunities are extremely low. I got COVID and I lived. So it's anecdotal, but take that with a grain of salt. Because your uncle had bills to pay, and I was not just going to sit around and just let that happen because, as much as everyone's dying, the bills weren't stopping. So let's just go ahead and say that. And during this time, especially around the summertime, that's when the whole George Floyd thing kind of popped off, And that's when everyone started taking sides, saying, well, he should have listened to officers' orders. And, some people saying, no, that was police brutality, straight up murder. It was something kind of off about it that I didn't like, especially pertaining to like CNN and MSNBC, the way they were reporting it. And I used to do like a lot of video editing when I was younger. I like to do anime music videos and Linkin Park and in the end, stuff like that. And typically when I see some editing like that where the host does most of the talking, but like the footage you really need to see is muted and they don't want you to hear anything, but they really want you to hear their opinion over the thing you need to be watching. I know from experience that does have a tendency to affect people's opinions. Now, my personal opinion, I knew for a fact it was the speedball that he had in his mouth that killed him. Because that stuff kills, okay? And then as I started doing more research as the years went by, I started to realize like there was a lot of sketchy stuff going on around that man's persona, especially the autopsy reports. Where was it? I think it was like the family doctor said it was the drug that killed him, and then the doctor that the Democrats hired that also did like an autopsy with like some other guy. I think it had something to do with Epstein or something. I forgot what it was. It was really strange. But yeah, it was the doctor. It was the same doctor that did the autopsy on Epstein. Later on, after that, that said that the knee killed them. And I found it really strange. Like, why is it like the news media really does not want you to watch this video unfiltered? Like, why is it they always want you to watch it muted with their flavor of opinion on the forefront? Well, that's called political framing. And, during that time where they were doing the whole riots and protests, you can call it whatever the hell you want. It was a mixture of the two. Some people were peacefully protesting, but a lot of people that were peacefully protesting was ignoring the riots that was happening under their name. And the people who were paying attention to that wasn't paying too much to the peaceful protest because, well, they're peacefully protesting because, again, we're human. And and humans are going to pay attention to where the fire is going. So, most people that were looking at the fire was going to pay attention to the fire. But to the people that weren't looking at the fire, they had their own fire. And their own fire was racism, systematic racism. And during that time, that's when I realized a lot of my friends that I had from college weren't really friends. They were more associates. And when I say a lot of them were just associates, I mean a lot of them were just associates. And every single person that were my so-called friend were Democrats. Where I had a question, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, there's an issue with like how they're presenting the information, And every time I bring that up, I always got shut down with like accusations of racism, like what why are you siding with the Republicans? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And it's like, I'm not siding with them. It's just, it's something weird. Like, I'm literally watching the same thing you guys are watching, and it's kind of off. Like, something's weird about it. Like, it's very inorganic. Like, very, very inorganic. Like, it's not like an honest deep dive on the information. It's more like it's trying to like make me feel a certain way to make me do certain things that I don't want to do. Because I remember when I was on Facebook, one of my old friends, Murray Donald, well, he's an associate at this point. I remember he sent me something on Facebook one day, and I was at work. And I was really depressed. Like, the lockdowns got me feeling like I just did not want to continue at all. At that point, I was like, I got diabetes. My immunities are extremely low. Your uncle could have went bye-bye at a pretty young age if the facts of that matter were true. And I remember sitting in the break room one day. This was when I was working at FedEx. I remember sitting in that break room one day, and I was just going through my phone. I was just out. I didn't feel like working. That day I was just gonna be like the laziest worker ever. I just did not care. And I was going through my phone. I was going through Facebook. I was even gonna sit in the break room past 15 minutes. Like, I just didn't care at that time. And I look at the post that my friend Murray sent me on Facebook. And it was like this weird black-centric type of post where it's like, it had this little pledge thing at the very beginning where it's like, I, so-and-so and so-and-so, is a black man. And from this day forth, under no circumstances am I ever going to talk down to my brothers or my sisters, and I will lift them up from poverty. And so and yada 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 yada, and had like a whole list of names of people, that actually are, like passing it on and sharing it and putting their name in it. And he wanted me to do the same thing too. And I just remember kind of looking at that and I'm going, no, I don't care. F you. I just don't care. I really do not care. And I remember just kind of sitting there, just like praying COVID would just take me. And then in the back of I don't know what it was. It was just something in the back of my mind that was just kind of like, hey, buddy, hey. And I just kept doing it over and over and over and over and over and over. And I was like, in my mind, just telling myself, like, what do you want? I'm just sitting here just sulking, just hoping that COVID takes me out. Like, what do you want? And it's like, you don't talk like that, right? And I was like, what do you mean? And I just kind of sat there for a while, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I don't really talk like that. I don't really refer to myself as a race. And I also find that kind of weird. I found that very weird when I was even 12. It's like, I don't refer to myself as a race. I refer to myself as a person. As much as I find it even more weird, people refer to themselves as, in third person, where it's like, I, Yoshi the Oreo, like, nah, you a weird type of fella if you're doing some stuff like that. And I just couldn't explain it, but like, once I had that epiphany, like, I don't really talk like that. I don't know why the hell is she sending me stuff like that. And I remember, I'm like, he don't talk like that either. So why all of a sudden he's talking like this? Because I remember back then we used to agree on the same thing. We don't, people that talk like that, it's kind of weird. And it's some weird type of people. I'm like, why are you all of a sudden talking like this? I was like, I don't talk like that. You don't talk like that. Why are you trying to get me to talk like that? And for some reason, that alone just like shot my confidence up for some reason. And it made me like really start thinking. It made me really like, maybe I'm right. Maybe what people are trying to do with me, especially with this whole George Floyd situation, is trying to manipulate me in some kind of way, shape, or form. Because like everyone that I talked to on Facebook and I questioned was just hostile that I wasn't prescribing to the Democratic narrative. To the point to where they just told me exactly how they felt. I had people who claimed to be against racism straight up calling me names, even racial connotations, despite the fact that they claimed they were against racism. I've had people unfriend me simply because I didn't want to vote Democrat, nor did I want to subscribe to the Democratic narrative of George Floyd. Like, let's just say, for instance, I had 200 friends on Facebook, 220 something friends on Facebook. And because of that, it went down from 220 to like 40. That's how many fake people I had like subscribed to me. That's how many fake friends I actually had that I had on me in reality, not just in online, but also offline as well. And one of my closest friends, who was also an associate, by the way, she was a person I really did had a crush on back then when we first met in college, but we decided to stay friends and stuff like that. She really showed me how two-faced a lot of people can be. Because she had 2 accounts. I don't know why she thought I wasn't going to see it, but she had 2 accounts. And on the account me and her were like going back and forth on, she was being very cordial, like asking me questions, responding, and being, engaging in a back and forth, in a very healthy back and forth. And I was like, okay, at least you're not crazy. And then I go on her other account, which is her business account. I don't know why she thought I wasn't going to see this, but I saw it. And she was making like these little virtue signaling posts of like, if you think this, you need to unfriend me. If you think this, you need to unfriend me. If you think that, you need to unfriend me. If you think this, you need to unfriend me. And it was everything I was telling her on another account, with her saying, if you think this, you need to unfriend me. But she was having still having a conversation with me, pretending to be a friend of mine. And I was like, it really devastated me. I was like, if that's how you feel, why are you still friends with me? And I told her on the account that we were having the back and forth, because I'm like, I took a screenshot of it and I posted it. And I said, if that's how you feel, why are you still here? I don't get it. Why are you doing this? And that was like the first time I've ever experienced like a very two-faced kind of it wasn't a relationship, it was more friendship, but like a two-faced partnership. It was really weird, like just seeing it in real time, and like the internet made that a possible thing. Because if it was just purely in real time, like her talking to me face to face, I would never discover this. But the internet made that possible, and that's the cool thing about the internet. That, yeah, it's a double-edged sword, but like if you know where to look, you can tell how fake some of these people really are. Like, it really broke my heart to like really tell her to get the hell away from me because she really was a friend. We confided in a lot of things with each other. Um and Alex, my nephew, this is advice to you. Don't ever be a simp. Okay. This is your uncle talking to you. Okay. Um don't be a simp. All right. Don't be that guy that's like, oh, don't be the guy that's like friends with females and it's like, oh, you can talk to me about anything and everything and anything and we can, confide in each other. Do not do that. Do not do that. Do not do that. Because it's just basically a way for them to like friend zone you, but to also use you as if you are a boyfriend, so they can get the perks of a boyfriend, but they don't have to be like a boyfriend to you. Don't do that. Um, because not only will they use you financially, they'll use you mentally as well. And there were a lot of things she told me during our college years that if I wasn't thinking with my penis, because I did want to smash her, I did want to sleep with her. If I wasn't thinking with my penis, she'd be arrested. Let's just say that. Because I don't know why she thought this was like a pretty good idea. But she admitted to me that she slept with her friend's younger brother, who was 14, and she was 20. So, yeah, that says a lot. But again, like I said, your uncle's thinking with his penis. Don't ever think with your penis. Use your brain, okay? And you won't ever fall into a position like that ever again. Trust me, because afterwards, after after that whole thing from college, that's when we got back together. She contacted me on like social media on my phone. She started doing that whole, oh, I'm gonna end myself and stuff like that. YouTube. I'm not saying people should be doing this. I'm just saying this is what she was saying at a certain time. You know, no, she like I started noticing like a lot of people do that in order for them to start manipulating people. Because she was really a, how can I say this without YouTube being, she was a 304, if you know what I mean. And she didn't like people pointing out the fact that she was a 304. To the point where, despite the fact that me and her had a rocky friendship, especially in terms of politics and everything, I was the one that told her that she was in a relationship with a white guy, which says a lot. And yes, she was one of those people that's like, oh, white people are racist. And I'm like, yeah, here you are in a relationship with a white guy. I don't know. I don't know how that works, but hey, apparently it just works for you. And I was the one that told her, despite the fact knowing she was a 304, and despite the fact she's like, well, I don't know if the guy that I'm with likes me for who I am, or he just likes me because it's like a fetish to sleep with black people, yada yada, and all this other stuff. I said, okay, I'm sick and tired of this because you always like keep talking to me about this kind of stuff. So I'm gonna lay it out to you flat. You got two options. Because the dude actually wanted to marry her. And she was really kind of like questioning it. And I was like, yo, you got two options. Take the ring on your finger, or you could be a 304 for life. Which one do you want? I'm not entirely sure what path she went with, but I know on that day she was like, you know what, you're right. But I know after that, she started flipping out, talking about like, I'm not really a good friend, which is kind of weird because I'm like, here I am trying to tell you, the 304, to like, hey, drop the 304 life and pick up a life that's actually beneficial to you in long term. you know. But yeah, she kind of broke it off with me after that too, and I was like, at that point, like at that point, I was like, at first I was broken about that, but that time when it happened again, I was like, I was laughing honestly at that point. I was like, oh, I'm the bad friend. Okay, cool. You know, it was weird. And I know I said this was going to be a short video, but apparently this was not going to be a short video. I am so sorry, people. And let's just say, like, going back in 2007, right? You know, this is when I started being more influenced by like independent news media, you know, people that, you know, see the bull crap that's around them with mainstream media acting like they're journalists, but they're not. And this is when I discovered people like Tim Pool, Young Rippa 59. I'm not telling you to like subscribe to these people. I'm just telling you where my headspace was. I was watching their content, a different opinion that was outside the Democratic narrative, you know, and I felt my depression actually like lifting up off my shoulders as I was exposing myself to an entirely different narratives, entirely different perspectives, other than the Democratic progressive narrative. I guess what I'm saying is that type of narrative was sending me into a depressive spiral. And when I got outside the narrative, now all of a sudden my depression just magically disappeared. I guess I can say in a way that Ripa, not Tim, but Ripa, who is also known as Eric July, he's a libertarian. He really broke me out of my depression. Really gave me a new perspective. Really told me no liberal or no Democrat has ever told me in my entire life is if you feel like you're crap, do something about it. That was the first time anybody told me something like that in my entire life. My dad never told me that. My mom never told me that. But then again, you know, she only lived in my life for about 8 years until she passed away. May her soul rest in peace. My grandma never told me that. A lot of people who voted Democrat never told me that, because if you look at it in terms of a political perspective, they really don't believe in the idea of like being your own person. They don't really believe in being your own responder, if that makes any sense. They kind of have this idea of others should be as fast as you to your problems, as opposed to you being as fast to your own problems. And I never really prescribed to that because, let's be honest, and this was the thing that made me buy a handgun. I had this one guy, I don't know what it was. It was just one day at night. It was this random dude. It was this random car that was just parked perpendicular in our street. And it was just honking. Just honking, 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 honking. And I'm like, who the hell is this? And I just look out the window. And I'm like, it's just some idiot out there just honking his horn. I'm like, whatever. And then next thing you know, I get a knock on my window. And I'm like, who is this? And the guy's not responding. I'm like, who the hell is at my window? Like, answer. Get the hell away from my window. And he wouldn't answer. And then all of a sudden, I got a ring at the doorbell. Like, this guy was weird. Like, he looked clean. Like, he doesn't look like he was on, like, type of drugs or anything. But, like, it was weird. Like, he was, like, really persistent on trying to get my attention. And I'm at the door, like, who are you and who are you looking for? I ain't open the door. That's for sure. But I was like, who are you and who are you looking for? And he's like, is so-and-so here? I'm like, nobody lives here, bro. Get the hell away from here. Nobody lives here. The cops are on the way. Get the hell away from here. And after, I think, like 20 minutes of that crap, he finally got into the car and he drove off. And that was the moment I was like, I'm getting a piece. I'm sorry. No. I'm lighting I'm lighting up anybody that comes to my door like that, let alone my window for that. Now, you're probably thinking, after everything I told you, under no circumstances, like I'm completely against Democrats and I'm only on the Republican side. Well, you're wrong because I'm going to explain to you from my personal opinion, my personal experience. There is a thing called an overcorrectness in terms of political issues, if you catch my drift. And this is why I'm saying, and this is why I really wanted to make this video to you guys, especially to my nieces and nephew. There are going to be moments in your life that the social economical environment that you're living in is trying to get you to think, act, and talk in a certain way. And there's a reason for that. And there's a reason why I don't purely subscribe to the Republican idea as well. Because not a lot of people know what Republican means, Because, someone says they're a Republican or a Democrat, the question you need to be asking yourself is, okay, what philosopher do you follow in order for you to build your foundation based on the label that you prescribe to? You'll find that a lot of people cannot do that, and they mostly make their decisions on being a conservative or a progressive or a Democrat or a Republican based on socio-economical issues and the talking points that skew them in that direction. Now, this is the thing you really need to be paying attention to, because this isn't me telling you what you need to do. This is real sound advice, because I don't want you going down the path I went down in either extreme when it comes to BLM or the Groypers. Okay, this is life advice coming from your uncle that you need to pay attention to, because I know for a fact your mama ain't gonna give you this kind of warning. I'm not entirely sure about your dad, but I know your mama ain't gonna give you this, because she is purely prescribed to the Democratic narrative. So she ain't moving around like I'm moving around. When someone tells you the literal philosopher that they are prescribed to, that they built their political foundation on top of, you need to go to the source of that political philosopher. Do not go to an influencer so you can get their interpretation of that philosopher. You read the source itself. So let's say, for instance, someone says, I prescribe to Karl Marx. You need to be reading Das Kapital. You need to read it. And you need to look at that person's upbringing and his lifestyle. And you need to ask yourself this question: do I want to live like that? And if your answer is no, you don't prescribe to that person, because they are trying to replicate that. As much as they would protest against the idea of trying to replicate that, they honestly do want to replicate that. They want to live that kind of life. And I've noticed a lot of people, they'll say, they prescribe to Karl Marx, but they never read Das Kapital. But, they follow people like Hassan Piker or Destiny or Bosch, online, political Brett tubers who are prescribed to socialism, which is just basically them being the Democratic Party. That's just an ideological lens when it comes to socialism. You may not know too much about that, but if you don't know too much about that, read up on it in terms of the key philosophers that these people prescribe to. Particularly Karl Marx, you really do need to read up on that before you prescribe to it. Don't read up on Derek Bell. Don't read up on Obama. Don't read up on Michelle or any of these trumpet players or coons. Read up on the philosopher that these people are inspired by and ask yourself this question: is this what you want to live in, the way he lived his life? Same way when I started getting pushed towards the right more and more and more and more, I asked them the same question, like, what philosopher have you read that has built your foundation within the conservative movement? Oh, I read up on Carl Schmitt. I was like, okay, let me read up on Carl Schmitt, because I'm like, I'm not going to take what you say or what other influencer says. people like Carl Benjamin or Sargon of Akkad, or other people like that. Like I'm not just gonna listen to what they say. I'm gonna read up on the philosopher that you said shaped your ideological foundation. The guy's a white nationalist. So you got a guy by the name of Carl Schmitt. Excuse me. Excuse me. So you got a guy by the name Carl Schmitt, who's a philosophical white nationalist, and you got a guy by the name of Karl Marx, who represents the left. Which, based on my what I've read about Karl Marx's life, is essentially a self-hating Jew who hates his own people for the fact that he cannot live the luxury that his people worked hard to obtain to be able to live that luxury. He was a wealth fund baby. He liked living off of his parents' wealth. And when his father told him, well, you're about to be a man, you have all this access to all this wealth, you have access to education that no other person has, so it's time for you to be a man. It's time for you to step out there and make your own revenue. It's time to make your own, wealth. He didn't want to do that. He wanted access to his father's wealth because, to him, he's like, well, you've already built the wealth. Why can't I just stay on it? Why is it I can't stay on it, but my sisters can stay on it? Well, brother, I don't know if you realize this. Well, because that's just a privilege for the women. That's a privilege for the daughters. It's a privilege for the daughters to be able to live off their father's wealth. But like a young man, no, like a young man, you're supposed to be out there making your own bread. You're supposed to be out there making your own nest, out there making your own resource. And if you are going to live with your parents, you're going to make your own fucking resource and you're going to fucking contribute. That's a fact. So then when I came across that kind of information, I started realizing, it's very hypocritical that I get called all these racial connotations such as, coon, Uncle Tom, spook, yada, et cetera, pet person, pet N-word, stuff like that. But yet the people I'm being called by these connotations are the exact same people who follow a philosophy by a self-hating Jew. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, what is the signifier of a person that hates his own race? The philosophy that he follows, or just simply voting the wrong way? You tell me. And I know this has been a long video, but it honestly kind of needed to be long, and I know it's kind of like all over the place. Well, this is unscripted, so that's why it's kind of like this. But if there's anything I really want to tell you, Elena, Alex, Araya, I love you. I really do. And I don't want to see you guys getting hurt in the same way that I did, or by other means that are lurking around the corner. Which is why I honestly wanted to come out with this video. The best advice that I could ever give you, that this isn't me telling you that you have to do this. This is just me advising you. If you don't want to do it, that is perfectly fine. I can't tell you what to do, but at the same time, I can warn you, I can advise you on these types of things. The best advice I could ever tell you: avoid groups. Avoid groupthink. When you fall into those types of categories, they're going to put you in a dichotomy where you feel like you're the hero, you're the good guy, nothing you do or say is a wrong or a bad idea. And everything on the other side of the political spectrum is a bad idea, and they're universally and unilaterally evil by nature. Never prescribe to that, because that is a good way for them to eat away at your moral and ethical foundation, to the point to where you have no moral or ethical foundation, but you pretend and LARP as if you do have morals and ethical foundations. So an example would be, let's say, for instance, you're a person within the groupthink of Black Lives Matter, right? And all Every single black life that is in this country and around the world is something or someone you need to unify with, irregardless of their circumstances, in order for you to stand against your oppressors, which is the white supremacist, white patriarchy system that keeps us suppressed, right? Okay, so an example I have to give you in terms of this black unification is what are we unifying under? You know, in order for people to unify, they have to unify under something. What is that unification is? Their unification is just black. You know, I look at my skin, you look at my skin. If we match the same, hey, we're supposed to be together. Doesn't really matter. We're allies. You're my brother, I'm your brother. I'm your sister, you're my sister. We're allies, and we shouldn't, under no circumstances, be fighting against each other. And we should be fighting against our enemy. We should be banding together and trying to uplift all black people. I understand that, but then the question I have to often ask is, where does it stop? Where a person is my ally? Because let's say hypothetically, my so-called ally is a pedophile. And this person's into having sex with 9-year-olds. Really loves it. He prefers that type. That's his age preference. Am I supposed to be on his side simply because he's black? Am I supposed to hate my enemy so much to the point to where I have to side with this guy? And I know some people are going to say, well, they use that to make you not want to, team up with these people or team up with your own people. So you shouldn't, under no circumstances, take that as a consideration. Again, but what if that information is true? And if you really think about it, why would white supremacists want to tell black people that that person that you're teaming up with in a factual manner is a pedophile? Why would your enemy want to warn you that the person that you are teaming up with is a really bad person that you do not want to team up with? Because factually, based on human nature, most people would disagree with the idea of teaming up with a pedophile. Wholeheartedly. They're horrible people. They're horrible people. A person who really wants to have sex with a child is a horrible person. Now, if you actually read up on pedophilia, there are some people that understand that they do have this affliction, but they don't want to do it. Those are people we need to help medically. But there are some people that have that kind of inclination and they act on it. Those are the people that need to be in prison, because at that point you can't be helped. At that point, I'm sorry, you just can't. You can't be helped. It's like the vampiric effect. You had a taste. It ain't gonna come off you. I'm sorry. But that's a reason why you definitely don't want to fall into this whole group thing kind of thing, because it's it allows you to leave your back door open where the most evil can enter your life. I mean, for crying out loud, and another reason why you don't want to do this whole black group thing kind of thing is not all black people are the same. I'm different from the people in Jamaica. I'm different from the people from Kenya. We live different lifestyles. We have different cultures. We have different history. We have different diets. We have different foods. We have different wardrobes. How are we the same simply because of slavery? That doesn't make any sense. And that's how these group things will try to get you to think, oh, we're the same because we experienced the same thing, slavery. And we're the only ones that experience that. But no, we're not the only people that experience slavery. White people have experienced slavery. Irish, Jews, Scottish. Slavery was, and this is a fact that I'm really telling you, and you can disagree with it or not, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to substantiate your opinion, my nieces and nephew, as to why you think that is not the case. even if it is the case, you're still going to have to substantiate it, even if you do agree with me. Because I want you to be able to explain yourself as well, to be able to defend yourself as well, if you agree with me. But at the same time, if you don't agree with me, you better be on top of it, because if you're not, I'm gonna make you look like a fool. All right, because your uncle does not tolerate stupid. I'm sorry. I mean, I tolerate it when you're young, you don't know what you're talking about. That's understandable. I can work with that. But if you 18 and you coming at me emotionally as if you know something and you get it wrong, I want you to know something. I am going to tear into you in a healthy debate kind of manner, not in like a literal manner, but consider me a safeguard in us having these types of discussions, as opposed to having discussions with other people that would more than likely you if you had the wrong opinion. Another advice that I could give you is understand who you are, where you come from, and ahistorically who your enemies are. Now, what do I mean by that? When I say who your enemies are, I don't mean in terms of race, because I've already explained it in the previous example. You definitely don't want to think like that. The way I think in terms of my enemies is ideologically, what does the person honestly prescribe to that I do not agree, where the ideology is about living the most degenerate, chaotic life of anarchy and chaos, or in terms of the Groypers, or in terms of white nationalism, living a very suppressed or living a very second class type of life within a society where we are considered second class and they are considered top class and priority purely because they are born white. Because when you look at it in terms purely of race, your enemy has the ability to whitewash history and tell you exactly what you need to know in order for them to guide you in the way politically for them to be extrapolating wealth off of your ignorance. But if you know it ideologically, your enemy is going to have a hard time being able to basically hoodwink you. Because when you hear it, the way that they explain it in a way is antithetical to your way of life. Excuse me. It's antithetical to the philosophy that you read, that you don't agree with. Because your enemy can only speak in a manner that supports their ideological framework. Even if they're twisting the lies, even if they're twisting the truth, it supports their ideological framework. And they can only speak in that manner. Because, it says in the Bible, words are mightier than the sword. Words have power. That is a fact. Words do have power. Meaning does have power. And when you live in a society where your enemy shares your dictionary, but they do not under no circumstances share your definitions, you are subjected to being manipulated. So this is why I always get on y'all butts about being able to read, not only to read, but also to be able to understand what you are reading. Because your enemies are really good at this. They can take a word like racism and have you emotionally invested into the idea that you're just a civil rights activist, fighting on behalf of the LGBTQ and minorities, when the end conclusion is that you're prescribing to Karl Marx, who was a self-hating Jew. Which means, ideologically and philosophically, the policies that you are implementing are going to be antithetical to you. It's not going to benefit you. It's going to be antithetical to you. Whereas your enemies on the right, like the Groypers or Nick Fuentes, the white nationalists, they'll co-opt the word racism and be like, oh, the real racist problem is that people don't like white people for some reason. I don't understand why. Everyone's always anti-white, and that the real racism isn't towards the minorities, it's towards white people, and you need to prescribe to them because, they're the ones currently under attack, which is a true statement. However, you don't want to fall into the dialectical that they set around the word racism. Because when they mean it, when they say racism, they mean, yes, it is a fact that there are people being discriminatory towards white people just purely because they are white. But their overcorrection is a white identitarianism or a white nationalism or a white Christian nationalist type of way of thinking that changes society, that is just nothing more than just you did this to us, so we're going to do the same thing to you. And that's an example of like racism in a dialectical sense, where the nuance of the discussion about racism is completely removed and your only options is the far right or the far left in their interpretations of what they mean by racism. And you don't want to fall into that. You really do not want to fall in that. Take this from your uncle who has been on both sides of the political spectrum. They are doing this because you don't fight racism with more racism. That just creates more racism. If you want to stop racism, and I don't necessarily agree with the idea of not talking about it, which is kind of stupid. You do kind of have to talk about this because that's some unaddressed kind of bullshit that you really do need to address. But it needs to be addressed in a way where we get to the meat and potatoes of the real issue. Right? The meat and potatoes of the real issue, as opposed to coming up with this bullcrap dichotomy of we're the good guys because we're oppressed, they're the bad guys because they're the oppressors, and because of this, we demand all the wealth that is within society, and they should be living in poverty because they're the oppressors. We need to get it out of that way of thinking. We need to get it out of the way of thinking, because then that allows your oppressors to be able to shut their hand up your butt. And then you think you're fighting on the side of your friends when in actuality you're fighting on your side with the enemy. It's the equivalent of a chicken advocating for KFC. It's like, I don't know why you think you're not going to be turned into a 3-piece of a biscuit. You're clearly a chicken. You're going to get chopped up, but you're going to be defeathered, chopped up, and you're going to be deep fried. And no one's going to know who you are, except the only thing you're going to be is nothing more than a product. And we are not products to these people. We are people. And you need to understand, historically and ideologically, who your enemies are and who your allies are. Because once you understand that, you can differentiate your allies from your enemies and your enemies from your allies. Because you don't want to be these people that's like teaming up with gay people teaming up with like people from Palestine when literally their religion dictates that they're supposed to those types of people by chucking gay people off the roof. You don't want to prescribe to that because, well, there's some other things in that Quran in terms of Islam that, let's just say, for instance, they don't have a favorable opinion about people from Africa, let's say that, or people who are descendants from Africa. Like, for instance, and this is why I say you got to be really careful with like what type of influencer you follow. Like, for instance, I Show Speed, who's friends with people from Palestine, who told him in his face in his own live stream that he was a great slave. In his face. Didn't understand what he said because they were speaking their own language. They said Akbar Abid. Akbar is great. It's Arabic. Great. It means great because, they'll say Akbar Allah, which is great God, or God is great. Abid is Arabic for slave. So they literally called the black dude in America a great slave. And then when Speed was like, what did you say? He was like, I told the people in your audience that you are a great friend. You don't want to be that. You don't want to be that. And he took it on face value. You don't want to be that. Be careful with these trumpet players and these actors that you follow, that you have an affinity towards. Because Malcolm X already talked about this. Manning Johnson already talked about this. And that's some history y'all need to learn. Now, in terms of Malcolm X, I'm not saying Islam's the answer because, well, Malcolm X was part of the Nation of Islam. That's not an answer either. It's not. You don't want to be too desperate for an answer to where the ideology that deems you as nothing more than a slave is the answer, if that makes any sense. Because while Malcolm X, despite the fact calling a lot of people who were voting Democrat was coon, which is true, he was kind of a coon himself. But not like dirty, kind of like I really don't care about black people kind of coonery, but more of like a misguided, indirect, I didn't know about this. I'm maintaining my position, but like the movement left without me kind of thing. Because while Malcolm X had a genuine concern about trying to get black people out of poverty, trying to get black people up, trying to improve the culture, Islam wasn't really a good solution. It was not a good answer. It's still not a good answer. So, and despite the fact that I even regard Malcolm X as a coon, I don't regard him as a coon in terms of, oh, he's a bad person and you should forget about him. I regard him as someone you need to learn from so you don't repeat those same mistakes ever again. And it's the same thing with Martin Luther King. I consider him the same thing. Not because he was directly like a person that hates black people, but because he did have a genuine concern of a genuine effort of trying to help black people. He thought integration was the perfect solution. And 4 weeks before he was executed, he started having concerns that more than likely everything he was advocating for in terms of socialism was leading his people into a burning building. And don't get me started on Rosa Parks. You need to watch Boondocks because that's going to tell you everything you need to know about Rosa Parks. I know this was a long video. I know it was like all over the place, but this is just my unscripted feelings. This is honestly how I do feel. This is exactly what I experienced. And not only is this an introductory lesson to my nieces and my nephew, Alex, Elena, Araya. I love you guys. It can also be something for the new generation that is budding into the atmosphere of becoming an adult, an independent. Because a lot of you have been betrayed, and not even just you, me as well. We have been betrayed for quite a long time. Our education system is a betrayal. Our politicians are a betrayal. Our institutions are a betrayal. A lot of it is a betrayal. And the reason why it is like that is because, well, they need to maintain power. Because if you knew the truth of everything, you'd want to them too. So, yeah. And if you made it this far, congratulations. You have an attention span that is worthy to be praised. Because a lot of people don't like this type of long-ass content. I can understand why, but at the same time, hey, if the content's actually good, then hey, why not have it? Leave a like. Leave a dislike. Leave a comment why you disliked it. Leave a comment why you liked it. I'll catch you guys later. Take care, and peace.